Wouldn't it be pretty cool if you had a database of everything that you ever learned that was summarized for you? That'd be really, really nice because you could basically use that kind of thing as a second brain, right? So today what I'm going to show you is this thing that I'm making called a Zettelkasten, and in particular I'm making a clinical Zettelkasten. Not only the original notes for being able to deal with something, but then a short sentence summary that allows you to look at things at a very, very high level, so that if you don't have time to dig into the big note, big Word document that you might have dug into, or that big Evernote document that you might have had to pour through in order to understand something, then you can just look at this table instead and get that knowledge very, very quickly and actually use this as a kind of second brain. So it's a really interesting concept, and I'll want to illustrate to you the way that I've done it myself. So basically, this is my Clinical Zettelkasten. It's in the app called Notion. So I've talked about Notion in other videos. You can check those out if you're interested. And this is just a table. So basically, this table is composed of a bunch of different pages on the left-hand side. And then it's summarized in this 3-sentence column. So let's say that, for example, in smoking cessation, although you can open this actual note and be like, oh, okay, like, you know, these are different cases, these are principles for dealing with nicotine replacement therapy, for example, and we've got a lot of detail there, so you can sort of see that, for example, you can use different patches with different doses, or you can use, you know, gum like Nicorette, for example, or whichever it is. And this is a big document, right? Sometimes when you're looking for these big documents, it's useful to have the big documents because you might have some details of, in my case, like treating patients, but in your particular case, you may have something detailed that you want to do. You can go into the document to look at it at any time. Or if you're someone that just needs a bit of information quickly and wants to get the most pertinent information, one way you can do it is literally to create this sort of 3-sentence summary thing that I've done. So I can look into this big document if I wanted to, but what I've actually done is that in this 3 sentences thing, which is just a text column, property type text column, I've just created the most important things that I just want to know. You know, if I have a patient in front of me, I don't have time to necessarily go digging through all the stuff if I can't remember what to do about this patient's like, you know, nicotine replacement therapy. So instead, I've just summarized it for myself. If someone is smoking more than 10 cigarettes a day, then I'll start them on 21 milligram 24-hour patch if they want it. If they're smoking less than 10 cigarettes a day, start a 16-hour patch. If they should be also on a quick-acting oral nicotine replacement agent of their choice, and you can prescribe the dose there. So very quickly, although I can always look through this big document if I want to, in reality I'm probably just going to use this because, practically speaking, that entire document leads to something like that, and this is a very practical way of just grabbing the information that I need at the time, and I don't have to look into it if I don't want to. And that's especially useful if you're doing something like medicine or really any kind of knowledge work where there might be a very detailed amount of stuff within one particular topic, but really you only need about 3 or 4 points at that particular time. And this is especially useful if you're needing to grab stuff really quickly. So the column to the left is taken to the next neurological step, which is to summarize things in 1 sentence. I can see that I've made a small typo there, but in this particular one, I just like, okay, if I really don't have time, then I'll just look at this 1-sentence one. Although perhaps this column is not quite as useful. It's more just a useful thing to be like, this is what is inside this particular document if I wanted to have a look at it. So let's take a look at another one. I'll show you how to search it. So if you press Command P in Notion, or I suppose that might be Control P in Windows, you can basically search Notion, which is kind of cool. And in this particular graph, I'm going to search for, well, hemochromatosis already there actually. Or if I search a keyword inside of it, like for example, iron overload, it'll actually likely come up there as well. So you can search contents of a particular thing. And so that's another really good point about Notion, is that it will show you some of the context behind what the keywords are and stuff. So let's say that I'm going to have a look at hemochromatosis. So with hemochromatosis, all of these individual little bits correspond to cells. So for example, you see this 3-sentence thing here is actually this 3-sentence thing. Where is it? Give me 1 second. So it's actually this 3-sentence thing here, so they correlate with each other, and you can see that actually you can actually just search the table itself, which is quite cool too. You can, what I've done is I've created inside the note a summary. So I started off backwards. So you start with, for example, I've literally just copy and pasted a whole bunch of information from Melbourne Health Pathways, which is a really, really good resource for if you're having to be a medical student in Melbourne or a doctor in Melbourne. It's really good. So I've literally just copy and pasted a whole bunch of information. This is probably all copyright, but don't tell anyone. And you know, there's a lot of stuff there. If I wanted to figure out that, for example, like there's a lot of important points, like only 50% of C2A2Y homozygotes will develop iron overload, for example. And this is obviously going to be super duper detailed. I didn't see the need necessarily to create my own retyping of the notes just in its full form, because there's no point. Like you might as well just copy and paste the original reference, right, if you're wanting to do that. But what I did do is that I created a summary of the stuff that I thought was really important. So you can see that these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 toggle lists, which are literally like gigantic. It's quite huge, and it's good if you're wanting detail, right? But sometimes you don't want that amount of detail, and so you start off by creating a summary within the note. So this is literally that quick summary, and then it'll be like, oh, okay, like I need to know about hereditary hemochromatosis, that the C2A2Y genes and the H63D gene bits are the two most common parts affected. And something important about summarizing is that obviously it has to be in your own words. The reason for that is that you'll be thinking in a certain way, and you'll want to very smoothly get that summary into your head, because you don't have necessarily that huge amounts of time to rethink again and process again and again. So instead it's better to just write it in your own words and write it in a way that totally makes sense to you, so that when you look at it again, then you can very smoothly go through it. So I haven't, like, I could say, like, I've literally just called these gene bits. I'm sure they have a better name than that, but for me that's enough to like understand, okay, like these two things are part of it. C2A2Y, the C2A2Y is called the C2A2Y homozygote, and definitely has the two bad genes that lead to actual iron overload. And yeah, that's my summary that I've put at the top. And then this is even further distilled down to literally just these 3 sentences, which is fatigue plus arthralgia plus other organ complications, is the clinical manifestations of hemochromatosis. The investigation that is the major ones are iron studies and HFE gene testing, and the treatment is regular blood, basically taking blood with initial maintenance phases. So you can see that, like, from Gigantosaurus note, it's just gone down into this more distilled version, kind of like distilling, I don't know, like a really nice alcohol or something. Not that I condone that. So that is a brief summary of what the Zettelkasten looks like, and over time, because you'll be adding more and more stuff to it, really this entire table becomes extremely valuable, because when you see something once, you'll be able to instantly refer to anything that you've seen in the past, and it's almost like, again, it's almost like having a second brain. So this is something that I've just started recently building, to be honest. I used to keep everything in Evernote, and then you find that if you do that, you just never look at your notes again. So there's a previous video where I had, like, I know 10 or 15 notes just on asthma, and they were just repeat. Whereas if I had this, I probably would have saved a lot of time duplicating, which is fundamentally what tends to happen if you do something like that. The other thing about using Notion tables specifically that's quite useful, so I've gone through this in another video as well, but I'll just quickly go through it now, is one, you can search by a filter. So for example, let's say that I only wanted stuff to do with cardiology. That's quite easy. You just literally click filter, add filter, add a filter, a bit redundant, and then I've just chosen specialties, and then from these colorful options, I've chosen cardiology, and you can see how like super duper easy that was to do. It's super duper satisfying as well, and like here I've got, for example, stable angina, which again is another, you know, super huge node by itself, which is basically I don't know what's going on here. PubMed sponsored this. But basically, like from this gigantic note, I've literally just summarized it into this 3 sentences, and then like these 3 sentences are the only ones that I need to know out of that gigantic list, because chances are that, you know, this stuff that I'm going to use is really only 10 or 20% when it comes to me looking this up. And if I wanted to look it up in more depth, I can always go back into it if, for example, I was creating a presentation at the time or whatever. So in this particular case, like I've just put, like, you know, stable angina, the main aims are to prevent episodes with GTN spray. Beta blockers should be used for metoprolol tartrate. And then with refractory angina, you can use amlodipine or you know, a transdermal patch. So that's my clinical Zettelkasten. Over time, this will become more and more valuable, and it's kind of like, if you believe in the idea that not everything necessarily needs to be memorized, just need to memorize a few things or be able to look things up quickly, then this is an extension of that idea. I think in medicine in particular, we're sort of often tasked with just trying to memorize a ton of things, but realistically, if you haven't learned, or if you haven't come across something since, for example, 5 years ago, let's say you see a single case of something really rare once in your lifetime, right? This thing is going to last you for like 20, 30, who knows, 50 years. I mean, I don't know, hopefully notions are up that long. But the fundamental principle is that all you have to do is remember, I saw that thing once. And this prevents that feeling of, I saw that thing once. What was it? I can't remember. So instead of saying that, you can say now, I saw that thing once. Let me look up my thing, my Zettelkasten, and then I'll be able to immediately go back to what had happened in the past, and then I'll know what to do about this odd situation that happens once in 20, 30 years. So yeah, this is second brain. And obviously the other thing is that you can share it with other people so that people can understand your principles as well for how you deal with things. So if this video was interesting, let me know in the comments, because that'd be cool. If you found it useful, click the subscribe button here, I think it says. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.